Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my review of Season 4, Episode 11 of Lucha Underground called Last Man or Machine Standing. And this was a good episode of Lucha Underground this week. This was a very enjoyable, good show this week. We had three matches, two matches on this episode, which I consider two of the best matches of this season so far, in my opinion. So let's get started with the review. And the episode opens with Melissa Santos. We see her, doing her makeup, and we can tell, she's still missing Phoenix. El Dragon Azteca Jr. Comes in and talks to her, and he ends up telling her that Phoenix is alive in her heart. And, the more that, she grieves, means the more that, she loved. And so Melissa ends up leaving to start the show while, we see El Dragon Azteca Jr., try to, see, to escape the friend zone. And, Phoenix is dead, of course, so. But that was the little scene to open the episode. But it was a good opening. And then we get to the first match. It was the Mack versus Mil Muertes in a haunted house match, the first ever haunted house match. And this was a really good match, very extreme match. This is one of the best matches, the first best match of the season so far, in my opinion. And before the match got underway, we had Katrina get on the mic, and she says to Melissa that she forgot to introduce her. And Katrina ends up telling Melissa to, introduce her the right way. And Katrina ends up calling her a bitch. And Melissa ends up saying to Katrina, no, she's not going to, introduce her, the right way. And so that, pissed off Katrina. Katrina then ended up kneeing Melissa, and she ended up throwing Melissa into the cage because the match, this haunted house match, was, a steel cage match. It had, weapons hanging from the cage. So Katrina ends up bouncing Melissa's head off of the cage. She ends up doing the lick of death on Melissa. And Katrina ends up taking a vase with flowers and ends up breaking the vase over Melissa's head. And so Melissa Santos had to have, medical, personnel come and help her. So then it went to commercial after that, and when Lucha Underground came back from commercial, the match got underway. Like I said, this match was a weapons filled cage match. Good match, very extreme. First one of the best matches so far this season. The first best match so far this season. And it was just back and forth between the Mack and Mil Muertes. There was kendo sticks there. Mack was being up on Mil Muertes with a kendo stick. Muertes ended up getting the crowbar and, attacking the Mack. Trash cans were involved. There was a point in the match where Muertes ended up spearing Mack into the cage, and the cage ended up, starting to rip open. They end up going to the floor where Mil Muertes then hits a DDT on Mack. And when they come back into the ring, Mil Muertes ends up grabbing a knife. It was a machete knife from the cage. And he ends up busting Mack open with it, which was crazy. And, Mack was bleeding really badly. And there was going through tables in this match. We saw Mack end up hitting two stunners to Mil Muertes, and in the end, Mil Muertes ended up getting the win. He ended up hitting a flatliner through the table to Mack. So Mil Muertes ends up winning the match. But it was a very good match. It was an extreme match, very enjoyable match. First, best match of the season so far, in my opinion. And at the end of the match, Mil Muertes ended up, directing Katrina to do the lick of death on Mack. And Katrina ends up telling him no. And so she ends up walking off. So, and that was that. But like I said, the match itself, it was a good match. Very enjoyable match. Very extreme. Then when Lucha Underground came back from the commercial, Famous B ended up returning. He was sitting there for the show, and he ends up saying, he ends up thanking all the fans, all the believers for their support in his recovery. And he said that it took 3 surgeries for him to keep his leg intact. And so he says that now that Melissa Santos is not here, to call what the matches are, he ends up doing it. He ends up calling the next match and then the main event. So he ends up calling the match, and he looks at the list and he goes, "Oh shit!" And it was funny though, because the person who he introduced first was Jake Strong, aka Jack Swagger. With Jake Strong, he ended up breaking Famous B's ankle, breaking Famous B's leg. So it was second match was Jake Strong, aka Jack Swagger, versus Aerostar. This was a short match, just another match to push Jake Strong a lot more. Continues to dominate, but match itself, it was short. We had Strong hitting a suplex. Aerostar ends up fighting back, hits a head scissors and a crucifix for a 2 count. Aerostar hits an enziguri, and Jake tosses him across the ring. Jake Strong ends up putting Aerostar in the ankle lock. Aerostar ends up tapping out. So Jake Strong ends up winning the match. And, the domination for Jake Strong, Jack Swagger, continues. So, but all in all, it was a short match. After the match, we saw Drago end up coming out. He ends up swinging his nunchucks, and Strong then retreats out of the ring, wanting nothing to do with Drago. So, like I said, it was a short match. Then, when Lucha Underground came back from commercial, we saw the Worldwide Underground. They were giving Johnny Mundo and Taya wedding gifts. Taya ends up giving Johnny Mundo a picture of himself with the Lucha Underground Championship. And he ends up telling Taya that, he thinks the picture is beautiful. But, he ends up telling her, reminded him, that the title was stolen off of him. And Taya ends up telling Johnny that she ended up getting him a title match 1 week after their wedding as another gift. And so elsewhere we see Ricky Mundo. He's with this agent, and Ricky Mundo ends up giving this agent a lot of shit. He ends up calling this agent useless. And then of course we have Ricky Mundo's doll, creepy ass doll. The doll ends up talking to Ricky Mundo. Ricky gives the agent a pen, and he ends up stabbing him to death with it. And so then, which was really graphic and unexpected. And so we end up going back into the locker room, and Jack ends up giving the happy couple matching bandanas. So that was that. But it was a good scene with them, with the Worldwide Underground. And next week we're gonna have the wedding between Johnny Mundo and Taya. So, and then 1 week after that, we're getting a title match with Johnny Mundo. So, and then we get to the main event, which was the Lucha Underground Championship match. It was a last man standing match. It was last man or machine match, and it goes by the title of this episode, Last Man or Machine Standing. So it was Pentagon Dark versus Cage. This is, in my opinion, the second best match of this season. This match was really crazy. It was really awesome. Was really looking forward to this match between the both of them. And as soon as the match started, they were brawling on the floor right away, both of them. We saw Cage end up ripping Pentagon's mask. It only showed Pentagon's eyes. Pentagon then ends up he ends up taking a bottle and breaking it over Cage's head, which the bottle breaking over Cage's head didn't really do Cage anything. He didn't even sell the bottle breaking over his head. And so Cage ends up finding another bottle. He breaks it on the ring post. And then he starts stabbing Pentagon with it in the head. And Pentagon, we see, is busted open. Cage is getting, tables. And, this match was full of, tables with Pentagon and Cage going through the tables. We saw Pentagon gets powerbombed by Cage on the barricade. Pentagon ended up grabbing a chair and headshots Cage with that chair, which was really brutal. Pentagon then laid the chair on Cage, and he hit a double stomp to Cage on the chair on the floor, which was really crazy. And they're fighting. Pentagon later on in the match, Pentagon hits a Super Destroyer through the table on Cage, which was awesome. There was chairs that were set up by Pentagon in the ring. There were a lot of chairs there. And Pentagon ended up hitting a package pile driver onto Cage on the chairs, which was crazy. There was actually a cylinder block that was taken out. And Pentagon, not a cylinder block, a cinder block I meant, that was used. And Pentagon then he ended up breaking one of Cage's arms, and then then Pentagon ends up breaking Cage's other arm. Hit an arm break spot on Cage, and Cage's head was on the cinder block. And at the end of the match finished with Pentagon stomping Cage through the cinder block, which was cool. and it led Pentagon Dark to retain the title, the Lucha Underground title. So Pentagon Dark wins the match. But this match, it was really crazy. It was a good match, very chaotic. It was a great match. Really enjoyed Really enjoyed the match between the both of them. It felt more like a fight than a wrestling match between the both of them, between Pentagon and Cage, and it was really good. It was bloody, violent, mostly bloody because of Pentagon, and yeah, it was an enjoyable match. It was the second best match of the season so far. It was enjoyable. So yeah, so that's it for my review of this week's episode of Lucha Underground, which was Season 4, Episode 11, called Last Man or Machine Standing. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until next video, I'll see you all later.